Howdy folks, this is Future Barbecue, just dropping in quick to let you know that this episode is going to contain spoilers for Celeste and Hypnospace Outlaw, which both games can obviously recommend, so make sure you go check those out before you listen to this episode. But anyway, hope you enjoy. Later.
I'm Honeyshuckleex.
I'm Zachbot Barbecue.
And I'm Giggleklutz.
Today we're talking about soundtracks. Again. We're doing it for the second time.
It's almost like video games have a lot of good music that we might want to talk about.
They do.
Yeah, I agree with that assessment.
So we picked 3 more games.
Yeah, and we're going with more than just one song from a particular game.
We're talking more about arcs this time.
Yeah, you can do a lot with one song, but, even in the last episode, my example was 2 separate versions of the same song, so it's like, that's the bit we're leading into for the sequel.
You're saying we're theming a themed episode?
Let's just focus on the music.
Okay! So, Giggleklutz, you have our first example.
Sure. So the game I picked to talk about today for its soundtrack is a little cozy game called Cozy Grove.
Oh, whoa. I wonder what sort of vibe that game goes for.
It's cozy, I guess.
What?
I know. Very busy visuals, though. I'm not the target audience for this game. I've been playing it a lot lately. But one of the best things about it is the soundtrack. And first of all, just a little bit about Cozy Grove. Cozy Grove is a cozy game that came out in 2021. People like to say it's somewhat like Animal Crossing. I've never played Animal Crossing, but I don't think it hits the same notes.
From an outside perspective, I can kind of see how it leans into more of like New Horizons, where it has a lot of collecting and building and stuff. But not as much of, like, the social aspect, where you, like, talk and make friends with the people on your island.
Well, you do have to talk to all the bears on the island. But anyway, it doesn't matter. It also takes place on an island. It's developed and published by a company called Spry Fox LLC, and it sells for $14.99 on Steam, and it has 1 DLC, which I do own. And as far as soundtrack goes, it has, I think, 8 songs.
Not very many,
and the DLC has 1. And what the soundtrack really does for Cozy Grove is it really chills out all the busyness, and it's mostly all instrumental. It has some choral elements, especially the choral elements are in the new song, but they're not like words. There's no words to any of it. There are no lyrics to any of it. And
like choir.
Yeah. Oh, you thought I meant like...
I was like, what does choral have to do with music? The big collections of little microorganisms working together. What does that have to do with music?
That you find on the beach? Which, actually, in Cozy Grove, you can find coral on the beach.
Whoa.
Yeah, there's a different coral for every season. I'm not sure if there's one for every... The seasons are divided into 3 parts. I'm not really here to talk about the structure of Cozy Grove, the game, right now, though. I want to talk about the soundtrack. And the soundtrack is all instrumental music that does kind of have... There's a song that's kind of medieval. There's a song that's very atmospheric. That's titled Cosmic Cave. When you know the title of the song, you're like, oh yeah, I can totally, this does have kind of a cave vibe. There is no cave in Cozy Grove, so it's kind of interesting. But I think some of the game might be a lot more stressful if it wasn't for the soundtrack. The soundtrack makes you not really keep track of how much time you've been wandering around your little island looking for stuff. And there's a specific song, I forget what the title of that one is, but it's flute-based. And it makes me really nostalgic for 1970s Sesame Street music.
Interesting pull.
You guys remember that Goodnight Big Bird album, right? It's kind of got the vibe of some of that particular song.
I don't know if this is making it more or less relatable to the general audience.
Well, we can definitely link to that Big Bird album if we want to, so... But anyway, that's one that I remembered from my childhood that these guys had in their room when they used to listen to music to fall asleep when they were little. It was one of a few different soundtracks that you guys had. What? That smirk on your face.
I just didn't know this is what we were going to talk about today.
But the reason I wanted to talk about Cozy Grove in the soundtrack episode was because it really represents how soundtracks can enhance the theme and really set the aesthetic for a game. Because if it had a different soundtrack, it would be completely different. Well, yeah, of course. You know, if it was a rock soundtrack or, like, battle themes played over, it wouldn't be cozy anymore. Even with the same gameplay. The thing that makes it really cozy, no matter how busy the visuals are, no matter how many quests you have to do at the same time, the soundtrack keeps it chill. The soundtrack mellows all of it out. And, I don't know, that's what I think is great, is that the soundtrack can pull the theme together for you. I think Cozy Grove is a really good example of how theming can be enhanced or set by the soundtrack. And it can make a genre so much more impactful. But that's not the only thing a soundtrack can do. Sackbot has a good example for a soundtrack doing this and something else.
So, I'm going to be covering the music of Hypnospace Outlaw.
What is Hypnospace Outlaw? This game that I totally have not played before with you.
To give my explanation, which is definitely not just for the sake of the audience who might not know what this game is, in this game you are a moderator on an old internet. Wind time backwards to the year of 1999. What does the internet look like?
Colorful.
Loud. It looks loud.
It is still in its youth, still so experimental, littered with busy colors and cheesy fonts. And most importantly, entirely too much music. Yeah, if you wondered what that all sounds like, Hypnospace has got you covered. Yeah, alright, whatever the heck that was you just heard, it's like that. It's like some other things too. Well, it does have a strong sense of cohesion. It hits a lot of different beats. And for example, it could sound like this. So, it's one of the more unique video game soundtracks I've heard. It's kind of difficult to explain, but I'll do my best. You know, one of the things about what the internet used to be like, GIFs used to be a huge novelty. I mean, they still are to a large extent, but that's in a much different sense. You get a lot of old sort of 3D renders, you know, just kind of doing weird jank things, and they, you know, get passed around a lot. You know, a culture of just finding these neat things and sharing them. And
they were preparing for memes.
And it's like, it's that sort of, you know, unearthing strange relics that is one of the key characteristics of the soundtrack, is that you'll hear a lot of sort of, you know, just kind of odd instrument choices here and there.
Does it make you feel like you're in the 90s?
Yeah, I feel like I'm really, when I'm playing this, getting a very authentic feeling for the time period. I don't know if that's true, but it's, if nothing else, it is very authentic to itself.
And unfortunately, the only one who really has memories from the 90s of the three of us can't tell you, because I'm the only one who hasn't played it yet. Womp womp.
Funny how these things work out.
But I'll believe you that it really waves the 90s flags.
It's very much, you know, music about the vibe the rest of the game is setting up. It's very immersive. You know, the music is, you know, not just an ever-present part of the game where tons of Hypnospace pages have their own theme music. It's also playing through your web browser in-game, because this browse a fictional internet. It's technically diegetic music. It is actually happening in context. And there's also just the fact that you get to see a lot of communities on Hypnospace, and yeah, some of them are musicians. There'll actually be distinct characters in the universe who, in the fiction, wrote some of the music you listen to. You have the Chowder Man.
Chowder Man!
In many regards, Chowder Man is quite the character.
Looking at these two when they talk about it, the eyes are so lit up. Everybody's so animated right now.
So,
I didn't listen to a song about shaving that's 7 minutes long for no reason.
yeah, well, I don't know if I'll be playing any of it here. Yeah, Ready to Shave is there's a lot to unpack with that one. And yeah, that is also referenced in-game. One of the characters has their interpretation of what the lyrics mean. But yeah, it's other notes of how music is integrated. The game has some music genres of its own, most of which I don't remember enough about their categorization to recall them, except for cool punk. That one's
the most prominent for sure.
Yeah.
There's a whole cool punk scene.
Yeah, and it's one of the side plots that I remember clearly. They did some really interesting stuff with that one. So, one of my favorite tracks in this whole game is a song called Ghost of the Grotto by the in-universe artist Basidia. This does tie directly into cool punk, that sort of genre. It's being spearheaded by this one particular artist named Freezer. It's this kind of complicated thing of it's music, samples that's very specific. Again, also in-universe. Gray's Peak Cola commercial, which was coincidentally done by Chowder Man.
I'm so confused right now.
Yeah. Samples that, make some good music out of it, and some, both Gray's Peak and some record deal folks recognize how good it is. Yeah, so this is, an officially endorsed thing, but, when you first get into Hypnospace, you first reach this scene, they're, talking about this upcoming event about this. I believe it was called, Cool Fest or something. So yeah, Freezer's gonna perform live in front of an audience. So then, there's a time skip you go through, so you get to check back in on how that went later, and it was a fucking disaster.
As events like these tend to be.
It was a fucking disaster!
Yeah, to start with the basics, Freezer was a fake. He was lip-syncing to his music. But it gets worse. Chowder Man was also going to be there, being a relevant part of it. He was supposed to have a dramatic helicopter entrance, and the helicopter crashed. Many people were severely injured. Chowder Man lost his leg, and somebody died.
It's amazing anybody survived. Helicopter crashes are pretty notorious for killing everyone.
A notable bit that I like about this is that, the specific order I said those events went in, that was the official statement. If you listen to people who were actually there, it happened in reverse. The helicopter crash was first.
News outlets like to go for the more drama part, right? Or so it's hey, if you thought that was bad, well, guess what's worse?
Maybe just trying to sweep that tragedy that happened on their stage under the rug. Point is, there's a lot to unpack there, but the question is now, if Freezer's not the real Freezer, who is? So yeah, to get back to the artist I mentioned previously, Basidia, yeah, he's the real Freezer, and there's actually a song about how that happened. Yeah, he was the one who did the cool punk originally, but people predicted it was going to be big, and they were right, but he wanted to, get in on that deal, but wasn't comfortable being the face of it, so they had to hire another guy to do it instead. Ghost of the Grotto is... I did not realize it when I started listening to it. I did not know about this plot point. I only figured it out because of this song. We're not exactly transparent about the situation. It's very obvious what they're referencing. Give them a listen.
Hidden in darkness, I sing for you. I'm captive here. They'll never hear of me.
This right here, this is the bit that got me.
Look how they love you, you pretty boy. They worship you. When will you let them see? I'm up all night, playing these melodies. I synthesize these rhythms too. You know I created you.
I'm tearing up just thinking about it.
I just had this song on in the background while I was heading through the freelands or whatever, and just was kind of picking up the lyrics, and I just stopped, and I was just like, to what might be an accurate quote, oh shit. In that moment, I got it. I wasn't sure I was gonna get an answer to that, but there it was. It just dropped on me like, granted, this is partially because it does have lyrics to it, but I've never had plot points delivered to me in musical form like that before. It's a standout instance for me. It's really something. A big testament to a lot of the stuff I love about Hypnospace Outlaw.
Yeah, I think I remember you, even starting the song over, so that way you could show me what you'd discovered, and then, actually listening to it, and then we just, went back to the page where we found it, and we're poring over this information that we've had access to the entire time in a new light.
And, there is at some obscure point in the game you can actually get written confirmation of this fact from the guy himself, but...
Yeah, for a while, the song is the only way you have.
Yep. It's real great when stories in general get to have things that just click like that.
You might even say it's elevated.
Yeah. Still get chills every time I listen to that song.
Wow. Sounds like art to me.
So yeah, this example of storytelling through music, through song, is, something I wanted to share, and, on that topic, we got a different example. Take it away, Honeyshuckle.
Alright, so, I'm pretty open about the fact that I really love Celeste, and in case you somehow don't know what Celeste is, it's a precision platformer, meaning it's a very hard platformer with a pretty rich story and characters in it. And the soundtrack, made by Lena Raine, it was made very closely with the game itself. She had a lot of open communication with the developers about the game and its story, and as such, was able to put more characterization into the songs themselves. The game follows Madeline as she is trying to climb Celeste Mountain, and along the way, she encounters a mirror image of herself, who is actively trying to stop her. These two characters both have their own musical instruments associated with them in these songs. So Madeline is characterized by the piano. Well, meanwhile, Mirror Self is characterized by a synthesizer. Sometimes the character's actions or emotions are bleeding into how these instruments are used in a given song. I think one of the best examples of this is actually the level where Madeline's mirror self is revealed for the first time, which is in the song Reflections, which plays in Chapter 2. And in the beginning, you kind of get introduced to some of these synthesizer elements, but there's still lots of piano. It's kind of calm until she actually meets her mirror self. And after this exchange is when the mirror version of Madeline just chases Madeline down and tries to stop her from climbing this mountain, because she's kind of this embodiment of anxiety and general fear of the world. And as such, when this section begins, piano. And then when the synthesizer comes in, it seems to overwhelm the piano. The piano is still there, but the synthesizer is covering it up. I think that this song is the best example of these two instruments fighting in the song itself, and does a really good job of characterizing Mirror Madeline as fear. Not just, like, as something to be afraid of, but something that does cause Madeline fear. And most of the story is, in fact, based around, working around this fear, getting over it, accepting it, and that leads us to the final song the final levels song, The Summit. I forget what the actual title is, but we know it's The Summit. And this song is, like, broken up into segments, so that way, as you progress through areas that look like all the levels you've been to before, it changes to match. But it starts off with just the piano, and then as you keep moving on, you start to hear the synth again. Time, at least to me, the synthesizer actually sounds happy, and the two instruments are playing together instead of drowning one another out. By the time you hit the final area, they are just so beautiful together as you're tackling challenges that you haven't seen before. You haven't been this high before, and you can do it. You can reach the top. It's like both of them finally believe it. Just the way that it comes across in the song itself is motivating in a way that's really hard to describe, but I've experienced clearly. It's not many games I've played that have successfully, in the music itself, conveyed just how triumphant it feels to overcome these hurdles.
Because getting to the end of Celeste is not an easy task.
No, it is not easy.
As to my understanding, this game will respectfully kick your teeth in.
Yes, very respectfully kick your teeth in and encourage you to take breaks. Like, have you hydrated today?
It's like, it's not about making you suffer, but it's about challenge. A lot of challenge.
Yeah, and it's not even about conquering your inner demons. It's about getting along with your inner demons. Mm-hmm. Which is a way, way healthier way of looking at it, and it's nice to see that the soundtrack seems to respect that as well. It supports the message, it doesn't clash with it. And now I want to play again.
Well, you own the game, so
I
you
do.
can play whenever you like.
I own it like 3 times. Different bundles.
Oh! So in closing, video game soundtracks provide all kinds of things for the video games, like enhance the aesthetic,
Enrich the narrative.
Strengthen characterization.
and so much more. But they provide a vehicle for elevating the visuals and the mechanics into something more.
The amount of songs and games that have given me chills or made me tear up is astonishing.
Not small.
It's like...
It's not small, not at all. And we want to thank you so much for listening. This has been Collab Not Multiplayer. I'm Giggleklutz.
I'm Honeyshuckleex.
And I'm Sackbot Barbecue.
Goodbye.
Bye!
Bye.